is it? Your father's lightsaber. This is the weapon of a Jedi Knight. Not as clumsy or random as a blaster. An elegant weapon for a more civilized age.
Hey guys, it's LEGO 9, and today I'm going to be doing a tutorial on how to make a custom LEGO Skywalker family lightsaber hilt from the Star Wars Saga. So I've been getting a lot of requests for this video ever since I came out with my Force Awakens video back in 2015, and I came out with the tutorial on how to make Luke's lightsaber from Return of the Jedi, and then I came out with my A New Hope video, and I've just been getting a lot of comments here and there about how to make this lightsaber hilt. So since this month is the 40th anniversary of Star Wars, I figured this would be a very appropriate time to do this video. So it is a pretty complicated lightsaber hilt to make, so I'm going to hopefully try to describe this project just in this process just as best as I can, because it can get a little tricky later on. So yeah, hopefully all you guys will turn out just like mine. So I'm going to be with you guys throughout this entire process, so hopefully it goes well. So we're going to start off with all of the materials you'll need to do this. If I end up adding more materials or end up not using some of these materials, I'll make sure to post a updated master list of materials in the description, so check that out. I'll have all the brands and stuff down there as well if you want to use the same exact things that I use. So we're going to start off on this side over here. So first things first, I'm just going to move these figures out of the way real quick. Just had them because that is the lightsaber hilt we're going to be making. So you're going to want some sort of sculpting material. I'm using Procreate. It runs for about 10 to 15 bucks on Amazon. It's really easy to use. All you have to do with this is you just take a little bit off of the white, a little bit off the black, mix it together, and then you can model with that and everything like that and sculpt with that. So I use it just because I've been using it for a while. If you have any other type of clay like green stuff or something else that you like using, you can. It doesn't have to be this, but this is just what I'm using, is Procreate. Moving towards this side, in the back, just to get that out of the way, these are wire trimmers. I just use these to cut through thicker things because an X-acto knife doesn't really do that. So these are wire trimmers. You might ask your dad if he has some of these. I just found these down in his workshop in our basement. So I've been using these, and they work like a charm. Then, like I mentioned earlier, you'll need an X-acto knife as well. So you might not need this if you have an X-acto knife, but this just comes in handy, but you will need an X-acto knife. Then you need a little pair of scissors. Doesn't have to be little, it's just easier for me to use this. I also have these, which are actually like fingernail cuticle trimmers or something like that. Sounds gross, but I just use these for LEGO stuff because they're really small and pretty sharp, so it's just easy to use those. You'll need a pair of tweezers, most likely, just for easy holding smaller things. Of course, you'll need some LEGO parts for this, so you'll need one complete blue lightsaber and then just an extra hilt, because you'll be using both of those. You'll have some excess plastic afterward, but it's just easier to use two lightsabers. Right over here, toothpicks are what I use to paint things. So you'll need either toothpicks or a paintbrush, doesn't matter. These are just for painting, so if you want to use toothpicks, be my guest, go right ahead. You'll need some type of super glue. I use plastic surgery. I've just been using that for almost 10 years now. Just been using this brand. It works really well. I get it at Ace, so I don't know if you guys use that brand, but you can use like Loctite or any other super glue. It doesn't really matter. Now this back here, this Coke can, this is a Coke can that was cut, so I just have a sheet of metal, because you need a little thin sheet of metal for this. So all you have to do is get a Coke can. Be careful with this part. You just cut off the top, like puncture a hole through it, and just cut off the top, cut off the bottom, and then cut a straight line up, and then you'll have a flat piece of metal. Like, you just got to flatten it out and everything. You won't need a lot of it, so if you have like another material you'd like to use for this, you could even sculpt it if you want, but I just find using metal is easier. Now moving on to paints. So paints I'm going to be using are, so we've got Apple Barrel Gloss, Real Red, and Black. You can get those at like Walmart. And then I have some Folk Art. So we have some Folk Art Metallic Gunmetal Gray. You might not need this. This is just for painting just a little bit on the bottom of the hilt. So if you don't want to do that, you won't need gunmetal. But you will need a silver, and you will need a gold. So those are two colors you will need. Metallic Gunmetal Gray isn't completely necessary. Then over here, you'll need some sort of sanding thing. I use these in my Return of the Jedi Luke thing, and you can just see how this one has lost pretty much everything, because I like using these because they're small, and I don't have to like hurt my hands while sanding. So I need some sort of sanding material. You can use sandpaper, whatever. You need one that's a little rough, and then so you need like a low grit, and then you'll need a more higher grit. So these are just what I use. They're like nail files or something, I don't know. Then this is just a sculpting thing to help me sculpt. You can use an X-acto knife or the toothpicks for this, but this is just something that will help me sculpt, but I might not even use it. Then one thing that is helpful to use is a little stand for holding the lightsaber. So I just made this little thing, just using a droid arm and a rod and some other Lego parts. So you'll probably need a stand like that just for, you know, not being able to like hold the lightsaber while it's drying or anything like that. So you'll need something like that. You could use a minifigure even if you want. So that is it for the materials. Let's go ahead and jump right in to this video. Alright, so the first part of this is going to be cutting off these little rectangle parts. So you can either just use your sandpaper for this, or you use an X-acto knife. You just cut these off, and then you want to cut off the part that, like, so you have this part that's going like this way, and you don't want to cut off the vertical part too. So just so you can have a minifigure hand like rest against like this part right here. Like right here, you want a minifigure hand to be like that. So it'll be better when I show you guys what this looks like with those cut off. So I'm gonna go do that real quick. So just cutting off this part right here, and then the part that extends to that lower part. So now you should have something that looks like this. So as you can see, you got those little bits off of there, and I sanded it down a little bit so it looked a little smoother. I know it still looks kind of like sloppy right now because you know, a lot of that metallic paint is just off of here. So yeah, next step is we're going to have to cut off this end of the emitter down here, but you need to be careful. Do not harm these two little rings right here. So I'm going to cut it like right here. So preserve these two little rings and you should be good. After you have that end of the lightsaber cut off, go ahead and sand it down a little bit so it is flush with that last ring. So now we're going to take the other lightsaber, so we can set that one aside for now. We're going to take this one, and this one you just need those rings off of there. So you need to cut it off right here, and then cut it off right here, so you get those two rings. So this is where you should be right now. You should have this lightsaber with that little emitter cut off that side and then sanded down, and then you should have this little set of rings right here from the other hilt. So now what you want to do is you want to glue these two parts together. So you want to take this hilt, put some glue on there on the bottom of it, and then you'll just want to like glue it on like this. Make sure it's pretty flush, and then let it dry. So after you let that dry, this part might take a little while, mainly just because you're going to have things drying, just depending on what sculpting material you're using. I'm using Procreate, so it's going to take about 2 to 3 hours for this to fully cure. What you're going to want to do is just take whatever sculpting material you're using, and you just want to fill in these little gaps right here. So just fill it in all the way around so you just have a nice flush grip. So I just put on the Procreate, so it's still not dry. I still have another 2 or 3 hours worth of dry. But right now, this is just what it looks like. What you're going to want to do right after this is just sand it down so it's all smooth, and then we'll move on to the next part. So I'll come back once this is all sanded. So I sanded this thing down so it wasn't as thick as it was before. Now you don't want it to be too thick on this end of the grip, because you don't want it to be like too fat, because we still have to add on the black grips, so you don't want it to be too chunky in the back there. So as you can see, this is it sanded, and you just see the Procreate in those little crevices, and that's what yours should look like. So now we're going to be working with the metal a little bit. Now we're going to do this, and then we're going to do some sculpting, and then we'll be working with some metal again, so don't discard this just yet. So we're going to do the little part of the lightsaber, like this little curved part up at the top here. So for that, you want to like get your metal, and then preferably like a pen or a marker or something where you can draw on here just like a little template or whatever. So as you can see, you want a shape like this. Now this is probably way too small, because this part, like that little curved part, it wraps around the lightsaber, so it's not just in one spot. It's got to wrap around a little bit. So I usually draw it bigger than I need to, and then I slim it down a little bit, but what you're wanting is just a shape like this, like an arch like that. So you want to just cut that out with your scissors. Then you're going to want to take something pretty round, like the end of a paintbrush here. You take your metal. Obviously, this one isn't like cut to what you're wanting it to be. This is just a very rough cut. You want to take it and kind of like just stick it at the end here, and then you want to just push down so you're kind of like curving the metal. Now this is why I use soda can metal, because it's really thin. You can manipulate it pretty easily. So you just want to like wrap it around like that, so then you get this nice curve going along. So as you can see, this thing is curved. Let me just focus in on this real quick. You can see that this little piece of metal is curved now. And so I already have one done. Just cut to the right standards and stuff, just because I felt like it would be easier for me to do it off camera. So I've got mine all ready to go. Now you're going to want to take your lightsaber and just apply a little bit of glue right on the top here. Now you probably want to do this without the blade in it, just so the blade doesn't get accidentally glued inside the hilt. You just want to put a little glue on this top part right here, and then you're going to take your little curved piece and you're going to put this on right here. So I'm not going to glue it on camera because this is just going to be kind of a pain in the butt to do, but what you're going to do is you're going to glue it on right here. It doesn't really matter where on the blade, it just has to be straight. And you want it to be flush with the Lego hilt, so it doesn't like dip down like right there. So you don't want it like this far against the blade to where you can see that there's an obvious dip. So you don't want it like resting on the blade like that, because that just looks dumb. You want it flush with the hilt, so you want it up like this. So go ahead and do that, and I'll get back to you. So I got it glued in here now. One little tip is to not glue it with the lightsaber blade in place, just so you have a lot more room to work with and you're not running the risk of accidentally gluing the blade into the hilt, which would be bad because that would prevent you from doing some of the stuff on this. So I'm going to let this dry for a little bit and then we'll move into some sculpting. So I've given the glue a chance to dry, so now we're going to move into some sculpting. Now this is where some of your lightsabers are going to be different from mine, or they might be the same, just depends on which version of the Skywalker saber you're going for. Now in Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope, this saber has 7 grips running along this part, 7 black grips, and then in Empire Strikes Back, and I believe The Force Awakens, it has only 6 of them. So you can either make it with 7 or 6, just depends on which Luke Skywalker, Anakin Skywalker, or Rey you're planning on making this for. Now, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix up some Procreate, so you guys are just going to mix up, or just get your clay or whatever ready, and I'm just going to wrap it around this grip right here. Now, since I'm doing the Empire Strikes Back version, I'm going to be making 6 grips around this part. So from that amount of Procreate I'm going to be wrapping around here, I'm just going to carve out 6 rectangles. Now, if you're making the Empire Strikes Back version, you can follow me a little better here. If not, if you're doing the A New Hope and Revenge of the Sith version, you might have to look up where to actually place these grips. But for the Empire Strikes Back version, I know you place one right here, so it's kind of like running down the middle part right here. You do the one on the other side, and then you'll have 2 on the top. So you guys can mainly follow it from there. If that's not a good enough description, just look up an image of it. It's not that hard to figure out where to place these. So I'm going to put one rectangle is going to go right here. Let me get this back in focus. One right here. So it's just like cutting down the center right here, and then the 2 on top, 1 back here, and then 2 more on the bottom. Now, since I'm doing the Empire Strikes Back version, the grips are also just not rectangles. They're rectangles that go down, and then they have a little divot in them, like, towards the bottom. So it's like a rectangle, a little, like, divot, and then, like, a little square at the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and sculpt these. I'll come back when I'm done sculpting, and if you guys have any questions about this part, just leave a comment down below, and I'll answer your question as soon as I can. So I got the grips sculpted on here, and they turned out pretty nice. So since I'm making the Empire Strikes Back version, I have 6 grips, as you can see. So there's 6 on there, and then you can see I also have that little split towards the bottom of the hilt in those grips. So if you're making the Empire Strikes Back or the Force Awakens version, this is what you guys want yours to look like, but if you're making the Revenge of the Sith or A New Hope version, you want it to just be 7 solid rectangles. So now we're going to move into a little more sculpting, and that's going to be on some little details up towards the top of the hilt. Now I've got my Black Series lightsaber here just to help describe some things a little better. So this is the area that we're going to be working on, is up top. So the first thing we're going to do is sculpt this part. Now this is going to go towards the top of the this piece of metal. So again, be careful with the metal, because since it's really thin, it could break off pretty easily. So you might have to glue it down more than once. And then what I did is I also glued it on this side, and then I put some glue on the inside as well, so it had glue all around it. So for sculpting these parts, I'm going to start off with this little thing first. And what I'm just going to do is I'm going to kind of like flatten out some Procreate, stick it on, and shape it to like this shape. It's like, you know, if you do like a side view of this, like a profile shot, it's just like a rectangle going up and then a curve at the top. So that's what I'm just going to do. I'm just going to sculpt a solid shape like that, and then I'm just going to use my X-acto knife and just split it down the center and form it up so it has a little gap in between. And then while we're up at that top, like after that's done curing or whatever and sanded and everything, we're going to sculpt the buttons. So on this hilt, you can see you have this main button right here. So to sculpt that, just sculpt a circle. It's not really too hard. So just sculpt that about half the height of this thing. And then also on the other side, there's this other little button. This can be more flat, so it doesn't have to be sticking out as much as this one, but I'm just going to sculpt that on there just for a little added detail. These things we're going to paint on, all of these little details, so don't worry about those. Then if you really want to get crazy, you can sculpt like the little details up on the top of this thing, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to sculpt this part, this button, and then this part down here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and see how it turns out. So now you can see I sculpted and I sanded these parts. So on this side you have that raised button and those two little prongs on there. So you can see that those are split down the center like that, and then you have this little raised circle right here. Now I didn't want to do anything else sculpting wise for this. Like I could have done a little more advanced things, like actually sculpt like the red button on that and sculpt other little details, but I'm keeping it simple for you guys who aren't really that comfortable with sculpting. So yeah, that's going to be it for the sculpting. There's nothing else with that unless you want to add a few other things. Then also if you want to add the ignition switch, you can sculpt that. I believe it's on this side. It would go like right down there. But I am leaving that detail out just because you won't be able to have like the lightsaber be able to like spin in the hand or anything like that. You won't be able to position it the way you want. You'll be restricted by that sculpted area. So no more sculpting unless you wish to do that. And if you want to do that, you just sculpt on a rectangle and then you paint it the respective colors and things. So now we're going to get back to working with our metal, and this is going to be the last thing we do with the metal and the last thing we do before painting. So set this down. You're going to take your metal and you want to just cut out a little strip of it. Just make sure it's straight. You just want to cut off a little strip, and so you should have something like this. So a little strip of metal. For size, I'll hold it up to the lightsaber here. You can see it's about half as big as this part right here. So if you want to use that as a reference, that's what you got to do. So now we're going to do the same thing like we did for this piece of metal here, and you just want to bend it over like something like this. You just want to bend it and curve it and things. You don't want like a sharp curve, like just bending it in general. You want it to be at like a nice curve like this, how it's curving over like that. Once you have that, you're going to cut it to size, so it's not like this super long, and then you're going to take your actual hilt, and this part is going to go like, here, let me flip this around. It's going to go in right here, and you're going to glue it to this piece of metal. Now you want to have a little gap, like you don't want to glue it right to this grip. You want to have just a little gap. There you can kind of see the clearness. You want to have a little gap there because that's what it's supposed to look like. You just have a little gap there. So for like a completed version, here's this one. You can see there's that little gap. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'll get back to you. So there I have the metal glued on. As you can see, there is a little gap in between the actual hilt and the piece of metal, and it looks pretty nice. This is turning out pretty nice so far, so now we can move on to some painting. Now, like I said earlier, you can sculpt the little ignition switch on this side right here if you'd like to, but I'm not going to do that just because I don't really feel like doing that, and I want to be able to position this any way I want in the minifigure hand. So we're going to start off just by applying a base coat of silver on this thing. So you can paint like the hilt, the actual like grip part silver if you want, but you don't really have to. But I'm going to anyway, just because, you know, whatever, just make it look nice. And then I'm just going to paint everything silver besides these little the grips on the end here. So I'm going to go ahead and paint this up. Here I have it painted all silver. One correction from before when I was talking about sculpting the ignition switch, it actually goes on the other side, so it'd go on like right where this droid arm is holding onto it, to go on like right there, not on this side like right there. So that's just one correction if you want to add that, but I'm not going to add that anyway, so that's just for those of you who would like to add that. So now we're going to start painting with some black. So first thing you want to do is paint the grips in black, and then for my version, you're going to have to paint it, paint like a little dot in the little gap between the things, paint a little dot in silver, so I'll do that step all in one. And then other black details, you'll need like 2 black circles, like one here and then one there. You guys will see it when I actually paint it on, so if you guys want to know what that looks like. Then also above this little circle right here on this side, you'll need to paint 2 vertical black little lines. So I'll go ahead and paint those on, and I'll get back to you. So I've got the black painted on here like I said before, but one other thing I'd like to mention that you have to paint black is we have to paint a little black dot right there, because like this lightsaber right here, you can see there is a black outline for that red dot there. So we're going to go ahead and paint that black dot, and then we'll paint the red dot. So I got the red dot painted on there, and it looks pretty good. Now we're going to use some gold paint, and in these 2 black circles on the side here that you guys painted earlier, you can try to paint 2 small gold dots if you'd like. That'd be the most accurate way of doing it. So you do like 1 dot up top, 1 dot on the bottom inside the circle, or if you just want, you can do just 1 solid gold dot in the center. It doesn't really matter. If you're going for accuracy and think you can paint that small, then go ahead. But if you just want to keep it simple, you can just do 1 gold dot in the center. So I got the gold painted on there, so now we can move on to the gunmetal, which is going to be our last part of painting this thing. So with the gunmetal, first you just want to do like a little circle on that piece you sculpted right there. Just do a little circle there, and then on the bottom of the pommel here, you'll want to do like a little clamp shape. Now, on the actual lightsaber, he does have like a little hook, like a D-ring on it that hooks onto his belt. So that's what we're going to make right now. So basically, it's just going to be like an upside down D, as if you're viewing like this part as the top. We'll have a D on there, and then just a line up. So it's a pretty simple shape to paint. So let's go ahead and do that. So I got that little hook painted onto the bottom there, and then I have that little dot painted on right there. So now we can move on to the final part of this tutorial. So to finish this off, just take a lightsaber blade piece, put it in the hilt, and there you go. You have the Skywalker family lightsaber from the Star Wars Saga. So here I just have 3 figures with my 3 Skywalker family lightsabers that I've made. I've got one on Rey from Force Awakens. That was the very first one I made, and it turned out, could be better. Then I have one over on Luke from A New Hope, which turned out pretty good, and now I have the one on my Bespin Luke from Empire Strikes Back. So that's a little sneak peek of him. I do have 3 other Empire Strikes Back figures in the works, and I'm hoping to have that video out by May 25th, which is next Thursday, and it is also the 40th anniversary of Star Wars, so I felt like that'd be kind of cool video to do then. So a little sneak peek at Luke. I have 3 other figures in the works, so all of those should be done by then, but if not, they'll be done very soon. So if you guys followed this tutorial, let me know down in the comments, and if you guys have any issues along the way, let me know, and I'll be sure to help you out with that, because I want this process to go as smoothly as possible for you guys. So if you guys do end up using this tutorial and posting a video or something with it, or a picture, whatever, just be sure to give me some credit, because this is my technique that I came up with myself. So some credit would be really appreciated, since this is my design on how to make this particular lightsaber. So thank you guys so much for following this pretty long tutorial. I appreciate all you guys sticking around who did. And be sure to check out my other social media accounts. All will be linked to in the description below. I'll have a complete materials list down there as well with all of my brands that I use. So if you guys want to buy the exact same things I use, then go ahead. All of those will be in the description. So thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys later.